Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at something that honestly feels a bit like science fiction brought to life. We are going to explore a really fascinating space where flowing, organic, biological solutions meet the incredibly sharp geometric precision of reticular chemistry. And they're meeting to solve one of the most massive environmental crises of our time. Just imagine a kind of techno-organic aesthetic, where nature's wild resilience fuses perfectly with high-tech molecular engineering. Because that is exactly the world we're stepping into today.
Here's our cognitive roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the acid-mine paradox, then move into nature's botanical extractors, followed by fungal and microbial miners. From there, we'll hit reticular chemistry's precision, check out the multi-barrier treatment train, and wrap up with from waste to wealth.
All right, part one, the acid-mine paradox.
So we're starting with one of our absolute worst environmental liabilities, coal and hard rock mine waste. Across regions like Appalachia, the oxidative dissolution of pyrite from exposed rock produces sulfuric acid, which creates acid mine drainage. But this brings us to a really fascinating question. What if our most toxic pollution actually held the key to our green energy future? I know, it sounds entirely counterintuitive, but the same highly acidic water that destroys local ecosystems is actively dissolving the surrounding rock strata, and it's carrying away trace quantities of the exact elements we desperately need to build modern technology.
And this brilliantly illustrates the paradox we're dealing with. On one hand, you've got acid mine drainage, just a dangerous, nasty runoff filled with sulfuric acid and heavy metals like iron and aluminum. But on the other side, suspended right there within that toxic soup, are high-value critical rare earth elements, or REEs, like neodymium and dysprosium. And we're not talking about scientific curiosities here. These are the highly valuable metals absolutely crucial for manufacturing electric vehicles, wind turbines, and advanced defense systems. The pollution itself is literally a liquid gold mine.
Moving on to part two, nature's botanical extractors.
So how on earth do we get those valuable elements out of the acid without just creating more toxic chemical waste in the process? Well, that leads us to biological remediation. It's a low-cost, solar-powered alternative to your conventional energy-heavy mineral processing. Take a look at this incredible phytomining process developed by researchers at NC State. Instead of building some massive, expensive refinery, they're using plants. Specifically, a really resilient native weed called pokeweed. This hyperaccumulating plant can be grown directly over acid mine drainage sludge ponds, and it just passively sucks up rare earth elements right through its roots. But here's the catch. How do you know when the plant is, full? Well, the researchers came up with a non-destructive monitoring technique using ultraviolet fluorescent spectroscopy. They essentially measure the unique light emission wavelengths of the rare earth compounds right inside the living leaves. By tracking the intensity of that emitted light, they can pinpoint the exact optimal harvest window based on peak concentration, completely bypassing the need for energy-heavy processing. Brilliant, right?
Let's move to section 3 and see how this builds. Fungal and microbial miners.
Now we're shifting our focus from plants down to the microscopic world, because fungi and microbes offer a whole other layer of biological extraction. Over at MIT, Dr. Ariel First and her team have engineered a biological scaffold that is frankly mind-blowing. They took E. coli cells and genetically tweaked them to express a rare earth binding protein called lanthimodulin right on their outer membrane. Then they freeze-dry the cells, turning them into this incredibly stable biomaterial filter. When you run complex solutions through it, it captures over 80% of target lanthanides like yttrium and terbium. And it does this using a highly specific 8-fold coordination complex. Think of it essentially like a molecular lock and key. It creates this highly selective binding cavity that just effectively ignores competing junk ions like calcium and magnesium.
But hey, we don't even have to engineer microbes in a lab to see astonishing results. Nature is already doing the heavy lifting right at the mine sites. Let's talk about Appalachian manganese oxidizing fungi. These fungi naturally produce highly disordered minerals called biotic hydrous manganese oxides, or HMOs. When researchers tested these fungal HMOs against chemically produced abiotic HMOs over a 31-day period, the results were just stark. The biotic fungal HMOs absorbed 99.9% of rare earth elements and yttrium in just 7 days. They vastly outperformed the chemically produced versions, maintaining stability and a highly reactive surface, all thanks to ongoing microbiotic redox cycling.
And if you ever needed proof of just how resilient fungal biomass can be when we're talking about bioremediation in harsh environments, get this. There are melanized radiotrophic fungi living right now in the highly radioactive cooling ponds of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. They're even growing on the walls of the International Space Station. They literally use the melanin in their cell walls to shield against radiation and turn that ionizing radiation into chemical energy, a process called radiosynthesis. I mean, if fungi can thrive by eating radiation in space, they are absolutely more than capable of surviving our highly acidic mine waste down here.
Okay, section 4, reticular chemistry's precision.
Here is the thing, though. Biology has limits. Biological systems can and do saturate. Say an electronic waste stream has 5,500 parts per billion of cerium. Fungi might only be able to accumulate about 350 parts per billion. So to really cross the finish line, we need to shift from flowing biology to sharp, geometric precision. Enter the world of reticular chemistry. This is the assembly of metal ions or organic linkers into highly porous, crystalline molecular sieves. We're talking about metal organic frameworks, or MOFs, and covalent organic frameworks, COFs. Now, traditional zinc-based MOFs might just dissolve and completely collapse in harsh acid mine drainage, but researchers are engineering incredibly tough, resilient versions, like ziphate grafted with tribubutyl phosphate. These can tolerate highly acidic pH levels while selectively plucking out very low concentrations of rare earth elements from complex mining wastewater.
Now, what's really interesting here is this number, 13.7 gigapascals. That is a massive amount of pressure. It's the shear modulus, basically the structural resistance to being crushed, of an archetypical MOF known as UiO66. UiO66 is a zirconium-based metal organic framework. Because its zirconium oxygen clusters are what chemists refer to as hard Lewis acids, they form exceptionally strong bonds with oxygen donor groups. This creates an indestructible, acid-tolerant cage that actually approaches the mechanical stability of solid geological rock. It's perfect for these extreme, highly acidic environments.
And the real beauty of reticular chemistry is just how precisely we can tune it. Researchers use a slick technique called defect engineering to systematically remove linkers in UiO66. That basically exposes active, under-coordinated zirconium metal centers so they can actively trap target ions. We also have covalent organic frameworks, which are totally metal-free and can resist extreme acids. Scientists do what are called post-synthetic modifications on these COFs, basically attaching specialized ligands like diglycolic acid. These super-tuned structures act as precision sieves. They exploit minor differences in ionic radii. We're talking about the literal physical size of the atoms to separate early and late lanthanides right down at the molecular level.
Which brings us to Section 5, the multi-barrier treatment train.
This is the climax of our explainer, because honestly, neither biology nor chemistry alone is the silver bullet here. But if we fuse them together, we get a closed-loop alchemy. This is the theoretical three-stage multi-barrier treatment train. Step 1. You run the raw acid mine drainage through a bed of waste oyster shells. The biogenic calcium carbonate gently raises the pH, which drops out the dominant iron and aluminum contaminants that would normally just clog up your system. Step 2. That partially neutralized water passes through living columns of those manganese-oxidizing fungi we mentioned earlier. They act as biological sponges to pre-concentrate the rare earth elements. Finally, Step 3. You take that highly concentrated acidic leach from the fungal biomass and run it through your MOF and COF membranes for high-precision reticular polishing, separating out the completely pure rare earth oxides. And the impact of this synergy is staggering. Computational modeling shows that integrating these biological pre-concentration steps with advanced reticular separation technologies could reduce the overall length of industrial chemical separation lines by up to 90%. We are talking about shrinking a massive, dirty industrial footprint into a highly targeted, clean, and efficient process.
Finally, Section 6, from waste to wealth. So why does all this matter on a national scale? Beyond cleaning up our rivers, this is about a massive paradigm shift in global economics. West Virginia University's journey is a perfect real-world example of this shift. In 2016, they made their first discoveries of rare earths in acid mine drainage. Fast forward just to 2022, and they opened the A34 pilot facility, the very first of its kind in the country. By early 2026, they launched a for-profit startup called Mission Critical Materials to commercialize this tech for defense and energy infrastructure. They've even proved this technology works at hard rock metal mines in Montana without needing to put a single new shovel in the ground. They are literally securing a domestic critical mineral supply chain entirely without new mining. No way, right? But it's happening.
So the crucial point is summarized perfectly by this quote from NC State's research team. This whole process, it isn't just about alternative mining. It is an economic mechanism to pay for environmental cleanup. By extracting high-value technological assets directly from the pollution, the remediation pays for itself. We are literally transforming an environmental liability into a highly lucrative asset.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. Will the toxic legacy of our industrial past, all our abandoned coal and hard rock mines, actually become the secure, sustainable foundation of our green energy future? By combining nature's incredibly resilient biological extractors with the razor-sharp precision of reticular chemistry, the answer really seems to be yes. We don't just have to clean up waste anymore, we can actually harvest it. I highly encourage you to look deeper into this amazing techno-organic steam revolution. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.